Hi, so for today we are going to talk about logic circuits and switching theory, and this is my very first video about digital electronics. So logic circuits and circuits switching theory is actually a part of digital electronics, and we're going to be discussing the introductory concepts about digital electronics 1. Okay, so let's get started. So as we all know, whenever we talk about circuits, okay, it is basically divided into two broad categories, which is the digital and the analog. So again, when we talk about circuits, okay, electronic circuits, so most of the electronic circuits that we are using today is in terms of digital already. But the analog, okay, part still is important, okay, as we transform from analog to digital in these times today. So when we say digital, of course, the signal is actually a digital quantity. So it can be a code, it can be a pulse, it can be a bits. Okay, whereas in analog, we have the value of the analog quantities that varies, okay, or changes with respect to time. So examples of analog quantities are the temperature, okay, so the temperature in which if we measure the temperature right now and we record the temperature for every hour or every 30 minutes, we know or we will find out that the value of the temperature actually changes instantaneously. Okay, so those are examples of digital and analog. All right, so the digital electronics is actually the electronics that involves quantities with discrete values. So meaning discrete values is that it has a value that is a discrete number. So let's say that we have 2.3757. It's not a discrete value. Rather, when we want to make that value a discrete, okay, so we can either round it up or round it down. So it can be 2 or 3. That what makes the value of this digital electronics as discrete. It has a fixed value. And at the same time, when we talk about analog electronics, these are electronics that involves quantities with continuous values. So meaning, again, the value or the continuous, let's say, the voltage, okay, varies from time to time. So we know that if we have an AC, okay, the value of the voltage when we try to look at it at this oscilloscope, okay, that the value of these voltages varies from time to time. And that what we call, okay, that falls under the analog electronics. So also we have analog quantities, or quantity is one having a continuous value, such as a temperature, just like what I've said, and we will see it on the next slide. And also we have digital quantities is one having a discrete values. So these are basically the basics of the difference between the digital and the analog. Okay, so again, the analog signal is actually, for example, at this figure, we have the analog signal measuring the temperature at different time. So we have from 1 a.m. to 12 noon, we measured in terms of Fahrenheit the value of the temperature. So as you can see, there is a continuous change, okay, of the values of temperature as time goes by. Okay, so not only on different time, okay, or on every hour, but it can change every minute. Every minute, if we are going to take a look at closer of this graph, okay, we can see that there is what? There is a change, okay? So there is a change instantaneously. Let's say between 9 and 10, there's a change here, there's a change here, there's a change. So meaning, if we zoom in the values of this temperature at a very specific moment of time, let's say at 9:32 in the AM, we can identify what will be the value, okay, in terms of temperature according to this graph if we zoom it in. And at the same time, it's the same. In 9:33, 9:34, it can vary. Okay? So, it's a continuous change in the value of the signal. And that's what makes this an analog signal. So how about if we have it as digital? Okay. So the digital signal, on the other hand, is having a discrete values. Let's say, for example, that this signal was converted into a digital one. So imagine the analog signal was converted into digital signal like this. So at every hour, we know that there is a specific point, okay, or specific temperature at every hour, defined by this values, okay, sampled value representation or quantization, okay, of the analog quantity in the given figure. So each value is represented by a dot that can be digitized by representing it as a digital code that basically consists of ones and zeros. So in digital signal, as we can see here, we have from 1 to 12. So in 1 a.m., this has a discrete value of temperature. And again, the second measurement occurs now already at the 2 a.m. and it has a discrete value. Okay? An exact value. So if we're going to measure between 7 and 8, there's none, because we consider here measuring the digital signal, okay, as what? As per hour. Okay, not continuous just like this. So basically, that is how we convert the analog signal into digital. Actually, we have 3 steps. We have sampling, quantizing, and encoding. Okay, of which we will be discussing, okay, in the later part of our discussion. And it is being discussed also in digital communications if you are taking digital communication. So this is the representation of that digital signal. All right. So right now, what is the advantage of digital signal? There are so many advantages of digital signal, and one of which is that digital data can be processed and transmitted more efficiently and reliably than analog. The reason for this is that analog has a very, very small, okay, immunity to noise. Okay? So that when this signal travels through space, through the wired or transmission media, okay, so there are some losses, okay, that is being incurred in the data, or even the data can be overcome by the noise, okay, making the signal or the information very, very weak at the receiving stage. So that digital, on the other hand, has an advantage with analog over its noise immunity. So if you are going to notice, before we have digital box or cables, okay, inside the digital box, we are heavily relying on antennas for our signal on TV. Okay, so those are still CRT TV, the cathode ray tube TV, wherein it's very bulky. Okay, and then when we try to turn our antenna, okay, connected in our rooftops, okay, sometimes the signal is good and sometimes it's not, and sometimes it's half good and it's half not. Okay, that's the disadvantage of analog. Whereas if it is digital, okay, if it is digital, just like the Digibox that we are purchasing in the markets, okay, so the quality of the video is good. But another disadvantage of the digital, okay, is that if there's a connection about the signal, there are no signals at all. It's either it's very, very clear or no signal at all. It's either 1, very clear, and then 0, okay, no signal at all. So, and also the digital storage has a great advantage when storage is necessary. So when storing digital signals, it's much more easier to store this digital signal compared to analog, and it can be compressed. Actually, if we have techniques on compression, now we are going to compress this digital so that it will consume much more less space, but still the quality is really, really good compared to analog. And also, example, music can be stored more compactly and reproduced with greater accuracy and clarity than analog. So we will all agree that digital, in terms of music recording, would be much, much greater of quality and clarity when it comes to or over compared to analog. And also, the noise immunity, just like what I've said, is much higher compared to analog. That's the digital advantage. Alright, so here is an example of an analog system, the public address system, wherein when we try to get to the mall, okay, someone is paging someone, and then someone is announcing something about the inside the malls or inside the buildings, right? So what happens to the analog system is that the original sound waves, okay, is actually going to a transducer, which is a microphone. A microphone converts this mechanical sound waves into electrical signals, okay? And these electrical signals travel to the amplifier, okay? And this is the audio signal. And what does the amplifier does is it basically amplifies the signal. So that's why whenever you use microphone, your sound is much more greater. Okay, so it goes to the linear amplifier, and still this is an electrical signal, okay, and it amplifies the signal or your audio signal, and then we have another transducer here, which is the speaker, which converts that electrical signal into a reproduced sound waves, which is basically much more greater of intensity in terms of sound. Okay, that is an example of an analog system. How about in a digital and analog system? So we have the CD or compact disc. In this example, whenever we have the CD, so whenever we try to insert the CD on the CD DVD, okay, I think that's already phased out, but for the knowledge of digital and analog, so you have a laser diode when you try to input that CD or DVD on the CD DVD. So a laser diode optical system basically picks up the digital data from the rotating disc of the CD. Okay? So there is digital data, and that digital data is basically comprised of bits. And when we talk about bits, this is the basic units, okay? It can have a 1 or 0 in terms of binary. So this digital data is basically converted or runs through to what we call the digital analog converter. So this digital to analog converter is basically converting this digital data that is stored in the CD to analog, so that this analog production, so from digital to analog, from this digital passing through the DAC or the digital analog converter, after the digital analog converter, it becomes analog, okay, so that we can input it into a linear amplifier through an analog signal, and then the output will be on the speaker and it will produce sound waves. So that is basically the combination of the digital and analog system. So many of the applications today still utilizes digital and analog. Okay? So there is also a discipline wherein logic circuits plays an important part, and that is the mechatronics. And the mechatronics is actually the interdisciplinary field that comprises both of electrical components and mechanical components. So more application of this is in terms of mechatronics, the combination of electrical and the mechanical. So the application of mechatronics basically, okay, are in terms of the robots, okay, in terms of the robotic arms in the factories, okay, that instead of human force doing the work, it's this robotic arm doing the work for them. Okay, that is an example of a mechatronics. So most home appliances consist of both mechanical and electronic equipment. Okay, so we have mechanical and then electronic, such as the washing machine. We have the washing machine, we have the microwave. Okay, the mechanical movement of the washing machine as well as the electronic components, okay, for being the brain and the source of the different functions of the washing machine. It's the electronic, and the mechanical movement is the mechanical part. The manufacturing industries also rely on heavy mechatronics for process and control. Okay, just like what I've said, one of the application of this is that the manufacturing. So the manufacturing industries heavily rely on this. And also, we have what we call robotic arms. These are used to perform precision in terms of welding, in terms of painting, and other functions in the assembly line. In terms of ECE or electronics, these robot arms or these robotic arms are basically used also in constructing, okay, microelectronics. Because if you are going to do it as a human, you will have errors. Okay? You will technically have errors, especially if you are building microelectronics. So the precision that these robots, okay, do in terms of the work, it's much more precise than the human because you can program these robots. So this is an example of a robotic arm being used in the construction of automotive assembly line. So instead of humans basically arranging and assembling the parts of the car, it is the robotic arm that does the work. And where does logic circuit what does logic circuit plays? Okay, it's actually the brain of this robotic arm. The robotic arm is the mechanical part, but the control is in terms of electronics. So that's why it's called the mechatronics. So let's go now to binary digits, logic levels, and digital waveforms. So in digital electronics, it involves circuits and systems in which there are only two possible states. So whenever we talk about digital electronics or digital circuits, okay, there are only two possible states. Okay, these are a high and a low as we study. Okay, so basically, one great example that is being used to identify a high and a low is the voltage levels. For example, a 1 volt can be a high, okay, and a 0 volt can be a low. Or shall I say, 2 to 5 volts is a high, and then 0 volts is a low, and the area in between, okay, between 0 to 2 is what? Not acceptable. Okay, so basically we have a high and low. In binary, we have ones and zeros. A high can be represented as 1 and a low can be represented as 0. That is positive. Okay, positive binary. Okay, positive logic. When we invert it, 0 as high, 1 as low, we call it negative logic. Okay, but in the study of this lecture, we are going to talk about always positive logic. So computers, combination of two states called codes. Combination of ones and zeros in terms of binary are used to represent numbers, symbols, alphabetic characters, and other types of information. So whenever we try to type, okay, in our computer, this computer in the keyboard, let's say I press A, okay, this keyboard basically, if I press A, generates a combination of codes that would what? That would tell to my PC that me as a user of the computer, I type A, and that A will be shown in the output of my screen. For example, I'm writing in my PowerPoint or I'm writing in my Microsoft Word, and it will be displayed as A. Okay, and the information, how did the digital computer or the computer understand that, operates on the combination of ones and zeros, which are binary, which are codes. So the two-state number system is called the binary. Of course, for binary, we have two numbers, 0 and 1. So in decimal, we have 10. From 0, we start with 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we have 0 to 9. Okay, that's the decimal system. But in digital electronics, we are going to study binary most of the time. So a binary digit is called a bit. Okay, a single binary digit, whether it's 1 or 0, it is called a bit. Okay, so that's a bit. So binary digits. In digital circuits, two different voltage are used to represent the two bits. Positive logic, wherein high equals 1, just like what I've said a while ago, and logic, low, as 0, okay, when we have positive logic. And negative logic if inverse. Okay? So ideally, one voltage level, for example, in this example, we have logic levels ranges of a voltage for a digital circuit. So there is a logic level wherein we can classify the level as a voltage high, and there is also a level wherein we can classify a voltage low. Okay, a low. So, for example, and in between the VL max and the VH minimum is an unacceptable range. So, meaning, if the voltage, okay, is in here, that is unacceptable. Okay? So, what we are trying to find only is it on the high? Does it fall on the high? Or does it fall on the low? So, there can be no overlap between the accepted range of the voltage high, okay, levels and the accepted range of the low levels. They cannot overlap. So meaning the voltage high values cannot overlap with the voltage low values. So for example, your voltage high, you set it at 4 to 5 volts or 3 to 5 volts. And your voltage low is 4 to 2 volts. That cannot be. Okay? Because your logic, you only have two outputs. Okay? You only have two outputs, logic high or logic low. For example, okay, the battery in your car is ideally, I think it's 5 volts, right? When someone checks it and the voltage is not right, let's say it dropped to a certain 3 volts, and you program the car that when it dropped to let's say 2 volts, okay, I don't know if that is ideal. So 1 to 2 volts, it should indicate a problem in the battery. So it will show up in your car that is a voltage low. So that's why there is a red in your car, indicating that there's a problem in the car. So, and then whenever everything is alright, is within the range of the battery, let's say 4.5 to 5 volts, okay, so there is no indication in your car, meaning that it is in a voltage high, which is normal. So it depends on the application, but that's one application wherein we can see how these logic levels work in our everyday lives when we are dealing with digital electronics or even simple electronics. Okay, so we also have digital waveforms. The digital waveforms consist of voltage levels that are changing back and forth between the high and low. Of course, since we only have highs and lows, ones or zeros, so the transition from 0 to 1 and 1 to 0 is possible. And that is what we call, okay, a digital waveform. So a digital waveform is made of a series of pulses. So when there is a continuous change, 0, 1, 0, 1, 1, 1, or even no change, it will still produce a series of pulses. Okay? So as we can see here, we have a positive going pulse in letter A from low to high. We call it the rising or the leading edge, the vertical line here. So from the transition from low to high, okay, we have it. And we have from high, it falls again from T sub 0 to T sub 1. The high becomes low again. And we call it falling or trailing edge. So meaning we have a 1 here, and then it falls. This is a 1, and then it falls, it becomes 0. Okay, that is a positive going pulse. Now, for example, we have already a high here, and it falls from the transition of 1 to 0. It falls, it has a leading edge, therefore it's now low for a certain period of time, and it starts to rise again because of the next value is 1. So we know that that is a negative going pulse because it is from high to low. And there is a time between the rising edge and the falling or trailing edge. T sub 0 and T sub 1. Alright, so that is basically the pulse width. Okay, the width of the bit. How long was it in terms of 1? How long was it in terms of 0? Okay, the pulses on the previous slide shows an ideal pulse. Okay, this is an ideal pulse. Technically or realistically, it's not really vertical, instantaneous change from 0 to 1. So in the normal setting, realistically, it's not really a vertical one, but it's rather a bell shape. Okay, later we will see that. Okay, because of these stray capacitances and other factors. So in practice, this transition never occur instantaneously. Although for most digital work, you can assume ideal pulses. Okay, whenever we are trying to study, we can assume ideal pulses. But there's no such thing as ideal. So this is the example of a realistic pulse. Okay, so we have the baseline, we have the amplitude here. This is the baseline. So as you can see, it starts to rise up. Okay, exponentially. Just like exponentially. And when it's 10% to 90% on the state, let's say from 0 to 1, we call it the rise time. The time it takes for it to rise from 10% to 90%, we call it the rise time. And then as it goes here, this is the very amplitude. You can see here that there is an overshoot, okay, and another ringing here, meaning there is supposedly the value of the pulse is in this broken line only, but it overshoot. And there is a ringing, okay, what we call a ringing. It's like a copy paste of an overshoot, but it's very, very little. And as you can see here, there is a droop, okay. Supposedly, a droop in the value, supposedly it's still on the first state, one state, okay. So there is a droop between or below the amplitude. So we call it a droop. So now it starts to fall down again. So after that, it will start to droop here, and for 90% to 50% to 10%. So the dropping, the measurement of time from 90% to 10% is what we call the fall time. Okay, and the measure of the width or the pulse width of the time wherein it is from 50% rise and 50% down fall is the pulse width. So that is the non-ideal pulse characteristics. So again, the rise time is the time required for the transition from low to high level. That's the rise time. And also the time required for the transition from high to low is what we call the fall time. And the pulse width is a measure of the duration of the pulse in 50% rise and to the 50% downfall, and is often defined as the time interval between the 50 points on the rising and the falling edges. So that's the pulse width. So, but technically, when we are trying to analyze pulse, we assume that this is an ideal pulse. Okay, so such that there is no percentage of series of rising or falling, okay, but it is instantaneously changing waveforms or changing states from low to high and high to low. Alright, so yeah. And also we have what we call the waveform characteristics. The waveform characteristics are basically called periodic or non-periodic. Periodic, these are the waveform that repeats itself after a certain time, what we call period, represented by big letter T. Okay, it repeats at a certain time. So the unit of period is seconds. And the basic definition of period is how many or how much time does it take for a wave to repeat itself. And the difference of that in frequency, but they are related, period and frequency. The frequency, on the other hand, is the how many cycles per second it can produce. Is it 1,000 cycles? Is it 100 cycles? Is it 1 million cycles per second? So that makes 1 megahertz. If that is 1,000 cycles per second, that is 1 kilohertz. If that is 100 cycles per second, that is 100 hertz. Okay? And the relationship between period and frequency is just the reciprocal. The reciprocal of the period is the frequency. And the reciprocal of the frequency is the period. Okay? And we also have non-periodic. The non-periodic are, of course, non-repeating waveforms. So again, a periodic pulse waveform is one that repeats itself. Okay? And the frequency is the rate at which it repeats itself, measured in hertz. And these are the relationship of the frequency and the period. So we have F equals 1 all over T and T equals 1 all over F. And we also have one important parameter, we call it the duty cycle, of which this is the ratio of the pulse width to the period expressed in percentage. Alright, so that's the duty cycle, T sub W all over capital T times 100. So example, a portion of the periodic signal digital waveform is shown. The measurements are in milliseconds. So in the x-axis, we have the time in milliseconds. So we have 0 millisecond, 1 millisecond, etc., 10 and 11 milliseconds. So determine the following: the period, the frequency, and the duty cycle. So for the period, we know that the period is the time it takes for the cycle to repeat. Okay? To have one cycle. So as we can see, if we observe, we have the rising here. Okay? The next thing we are going to find is the rising, because that is when the period is completed. So if we go to the rising, we have here pulse width and downfall, and we have here the rising again. So that is the period, from the rising to the rising to the another rising. That's the period. That is where it repeats itself. So that is from 0 to 10. So that's why our period here is 10 milliseconds. Okay? So if you're going to measure it here to the downfall of this, so let's say downfall, then you have transition from low to high, and then you have downfall again. You can measure also the period at that point. So we have 1 millisecond at the downfall, and another downfall occurs at 11 milliseconds. So 11 minus 1 is still 10. So the period here is 10 milliseconds. Okay? But what I mean by 10 milliseconds, 10 times 10 raised to negative 3, or 0.01. The frequency is just the reciprocal of the period. So that would be 1 all over T, or 0.01. So the frequency here is 100 hertz. Alright? So that is the 100 hertz. Okay. And the duty cycle percentage is what? TW all over period, or capital T. So the TW is, as shown in here, the pulse width is 1 millisecond. So you have 1 milliseconds. 1 times 10 raised to negative 3. And the period is, of course, 10 milliseconds. 10 milliseconds. So you just divide those two. Then times 100. We have 10% of the duty cycle. So the answer, the period is 10 millisecond. The frequency is 100 hertz. The duty cycle is 10%. Alright? And also, we have what we call the timing diagram. So the timing diagram is a graph of digital waveforms showing the actual relationship of two or more waveforms and how each waveform changes in relation to others. So we have a clock waveform here, clock wave. So this clock is used for synchronization of the inputs of the signals. So we have three signals here, three inputs. We have A, B, and C. So as you can see, this changes from one state to another based on this period of clock, so that we will be able to analyze, okay, how this waveform A, B, C affect each other as they changes states. So as you can see in the 7th period, okay, the states of A, B, and C are all high. Okay, so we can see a relationship here at this 7th occurrence of the same period. So that is a timing diagram. So we also have what we call the data transfer. Okay, so the manner of how the data is transferred. So we have what we call a data. A data refers to a group of bits that convey some type of information. So whenever we talk about data, they have an information. They are referring to a groups of bits, ones and zeros, and they convey some type of information. So because that's how digital electronics work, in the form of data. So whenever I press something on my keyboard, okay, it sends out a data to the CPU and goes back to the CPU, to the monitor, and that will output what I have just pressed. Let's say I pressed A. The monitor displays A. That's how fast it is. Okay, the data transfer. So binary data are transferred in two ways, serial and parallel. Let's differentiate. When bits are transferred in serial form from one point to another, they are sent one bit at a time in a single line. So meaning, one bit at a time, okay, the data is being sent on a single line. So the advantage is that you're going to use only one line for the transmission because it's a serial transmission. But the only downside is that since the transmission is bit by bit, it takes more time. Okay? So the first bit must be sent, and then the second bit must be sent before the third bit can be sent, and etc. etc. Okay, so that's how serial transmission works. So let's say we have 8 bits of binary data, okay, and we are going to send it to the receiving device from time t sub 0 to times t sub 7. So that is the amount of time we are going to wash out so that, okay, the data is completely transferred. How about in parallel transmission? In parallel transmission, all the bits are sent out in a group, okay, on a separate line at the same time. So you have, let's say, if you have 8 bits, you also have 8 lines. And for those 8 lines, okay, we are going to send the bits at the same time. Okay? So advantage of this, much faster. Because it only takes one time. Okay? It's much faster compared to serial transmission. Okay, but the downside is that you have to use more lines, which can mean much more expensive. Okay? And so for example, we have here the 8 bits of data, the same data we have transferred here. So in a parallel transmission, so these 8 bits are sent all at once at the same time. So it's much faster. All right? So it takes what? It is 8 times faster, let's say, than the serial. Okay, because it takes t sub 0 to t sub 7. This is only t sub 0 to t sub 1. Okay, so again, it's 8 times faster in terms of the transmission. Now, for the last part, we have the example. Determine the time required to serially transfer the 8 bits contained in the waveform below. The leftmost bit is the first to be transferred. 1 megahertz clocks is used as reference. So we have to determine how much time it takes for these 8 bits to be transferred serially. Okay, so we are given a 1 megahertz. So we can find we have the frequency, we can find the period. So 1 times 10 raised to 6, that's mega. Okay, so we have 1 microsecond. So the period is 1 microsecond. So each data is transferred, or each bit is transferred 1 microsecond. So if that is serial transfer, we have 8 bits. So 1 microsecond times 8, that's the amount of time to transfer the 8 bits, okay, serially. So you have 8 microseconds. Alright? So letter B, what is the total time to transfer the same 8 bits in parallel? So last time we have got 1 microseconds as the period. Of course, if this is transferred as parallel, okay, it means that these are all transferred the same at once. So it will only take 1 microsecond to transfer it all. So to transfer all the 8 bits from the sender to the receiver. So the answer here is 1 microsecond. Alright? So again, that's all. Thank you so much for listening. This is Engineer Abat. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share my channel. And this is just the first part of our digital electronics playlist, logic circuits and switching theory. So see you again on the next video.